record. And we're now recording, which is always good. Share computer sound and share screen. Well, it's absolutely lovely to have Darren Shaw with us today. Welcome to the collective. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining in this weird scheme that's been going on. Mind you, it's getting rather normal for me now.
Yeah, sure.
But it's a bit of an odd one, I will admit, for me for this one, because I feel there's a wonderful quote from a Sherlock Holmes story called Thor Bridge, where he says, "I'm getting into the bad habit of telling the story backwards.
Right.
And I kind of know the finished result better than I know the start of the story." And as always, I sort of checked out your musical credentials, and you've got a few scripture-based arrangements and a couple of hallelujah choruses to your name. But you're not, although in the Salvation Army world, you're known for one very lovely and very famous piece of music, which we will, of course, talk about. And hopefully I will be able to play for those who have no idea what is going on. I kind of want to ask, just because we know that one piece of music, does that mean that you've not been a creative soul in other ways? Where did the gift of composition sprout for you?
It's been there for a long time. I've been writing definitely since I was somewhere around 12, 13 years of age. So more than 30 years. But it started earlier than that. My first recollections, growing up in a family of musicians was the first thing. Yeah. And obviously, those who don't know me, I grew up in the army. I think I'm something like 6th generation Salvationist or something like that.
6th?
Yes, my great-great-grandparents were some of the first Salvationists in Eastleigh, which is near Southampton.
That's a pedigree. I can do 4th, but 6th?
Yeah.
Wave the flag.
Well, if I could find one.
That is impressive. I'll wave my singing company flag.
Yes, do that. Yeah. No, I mean, it's something you inherit in terms of culture, but obviously I believe that it's not something you inherit as a faith. You have to find that for yourself.
Yeah.
Very much so. So that's the most important thing, is that I have found that for myself, the most important part of it. But yeah, I grew up in a Salvationist and musical household. My mum's parents particularly, my grandmother was a gold medal winning soprano singer. My grandfather was a church organist and pianist, and he was into male voice choirs and barbershop quartets and any vocal and keyboard music you could lay your hands on. So that was always going on. And there are pictures of me in my baby walker reaching up and plinking on the piano, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So it started very early. I taught myself to play the piano. Maybe when I was 10 years old, maybe. I was already playing in the YP band at that stage. So music was always there. Mm-hmm. I have a vivid memory of when my sister was born. She had her own room at the end of the house, and to get to it, you had to walk through my room. So my granddad, being a carpenter as he was, he started building a stud wall to separate, to build a hallway really to get to the back of the house, so my sister was going to have her room. And while it was, I don't know whether it was while it was still in construction, whether the plaster was drying or what it was, but he made and put up all of these little memory cards all over the wall, musical notes, musical terms, musical phrases, all this stuff all over my wall. And I think I just absorbed it. It was just up on my wall for I don't know how long, but it just helped. And he made little games, little wooden games with counters to learn where the notes went. And all that kind of stuff. So I had this big board with staves on it. I could put notes in all the holes. So I guess there was a little bit of early training going on there. Yeah. But really the birth of it was when, as I say, between 12 and 13, when I had a real encounter with God. I already believed. I remember believing from when I was a junior soldier that God was there and all that. That sort of general belief. But I started hearing from God, really connecting with him properly, I think you'd say, at about 12. And at a similar time, my musical development came into sort of dovetailed with my spiritual development, and that's when I started writing. Not so much writing as improvising. I would sit at the piano after school every day. My mum always said that she could tell what kind of day I had by what sound I was making.
A bad day, Beethoven's Ninth. Good day, Tchaikovsky's Fifth.
Yeah. So it's kind of, the music reflected my mood, and I guess
It always does.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, that I learned to create sounds with my fingers that reflected what was going on inside. Yeah. And so the tune that we're going to talk about, Guardian of My Soul, was actually written when I was 13.
I haven't got that far yet.
No, but we'll get there. So that's just one of the melodies that just came out of my fingers really at that stage. So that's where it all began. Sort of this sort of I don't know, this bubbling pot of stuff coming together at that sort of age. Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to people like Ian Fowler and Martin Cordner, who were very much YP band leaders, players. You said you had a healthy YP band and musical grounding. So were there any band compositions and band improvisations that got to the stand in those days that just sit in a folder now? Because
well,
I don't like the phrase one-hit wonder, but I think it's incredibly derogatory and I think it's very unfair. But with the exception of, I don't know who else, I can only talk to you about one Salvation Army piece. So I said there could be 50 marches, hymn tune settings that your YP band got to hear that you just haven't bothered to send in. This is part of the conversation, learning the story behind the person. So was your local YP band a victim of your improvisational experimentation in music?
Not the YP band, no, because not because. Then my dad was the YP band leader when I first joined it. That was great. I loved that. Except for when we went caroling with the YP band, because my birthday's in December, and we always ended up going caroling on my birthday, and he would always stop the band at 8:20 in the evening and turn around and say to everyone, it's 8:20 on this particular day. This is when this young man was born, and made me stand up or whatever. So that was an experience. But no, when I first started writing, I felt that I was a songwriter.
Yeah.
Everything was songs to start with. So it was a singing company who got the the brunt of my stuff, experimentation, to start with. Then I graduated to a small group, sort of what are sometimes known as worship bands, started to appear in the early 90s. And so some of my arrangements made their way to that, an experiment really in the core. And it wasn't until I was sort of 15, 16 years of age I started writing for band. I did I wrote a march for my GCSE music composition. And I wrote 2 or 3 other bits. And I think music school bands and youth bands played them, but I never sent any of them in. So there are a handful of things written in the mid-90s for band. Yeah. And that kind of laid to rest my band writing career for a number of years, really.
So when you were, you were doing your GCSEs, was it a case of what had the calling come at that point to become an officer, or was that a case of that was down the road and you were, I don't know, gym instructor, music teacher, postman, follow dad into the Royal Mail? When did the what was the plan? Kind of, okay, I'm going to, the local building society wants a postman. That's what I'll do. And then, of course, you answered the call. What was the difference period? What was in the GCSE aiming towards A levels and university or whatever? Yeah,
the GCSE, I had to make a choice. I mean, you asked about creativity at the beginning, and creativity is one of the hallmarks of everything I've done, but not just in music. I've been creative in all kinds of areas. I can't help but make stuff. I also can't help but break stuff, but that's how I learn how to make it, if you see what I mean. I'm that kind of... I take things apart.
That's why.
Yeah. I like pulling stuff apart.
That's how I learned to do PowerPoint, by taking... I had a lovely friend of mine called Ed Stonham out at Histon, and he used to send me these beautiful PowerPoints with all this animation. I'd sit there and take them all apart to learn how he done it. I thought, I can do this. And,
if you can put it back together and it still works, you understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it was with music, and it's with art and stuff like that. So GCSEs were kind of tough for me to decide on. I was doing well academically, but also in the creative side of things. I had to decide because of the way options worked between art and music. And both departments wanted me to do the GCSE in their subject. I ended up choosing music, but not with any real look towards any kind of career, because the call really came quite early. But when I was having those conversations with God at 12, 13 years of age, that's when that conversation started. I didn't necessarily say, oh yeah, that's going to be what I do at that stage, but I knew that it was there, and it was always in the back of my mind. And certainly by the time I chose my A-levels, I was starting to think that way. So I ended up doing a mixture of sciences and arts at GCSE, and my A-levels were kind of dictated to me in a sense. I kind of wanted to do English and music, but the school offered me a scholarship to do biology, chemistry and physics. And it was sponsored by Sir Edward Abraham, who's one of a member of the team that discovered and developed penicillin. He had gone to the same school as I was at, and so he funded this scholarship, and I got to meet him and have dinner with him, and so I ended up doing A-levels in the 3 sciences, which led me on then to go to university to do zoology as a degree, not because I wanted to go into zoology, but because I thought I'd enjoy it, because afterwards I was heading for training college.
That's a very eclectic mix, sort of biology and to end up doing a degree in zoology and then kind of off to becoming a Salvation Army officer.
Yeah.
With all the musical population, that's a real diverse opposite end of the spectrum kind of thing, but it all adds to your makeup, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I've always been interested in a wide variety of things, a wide variety of music, but a wide variety of subjects. I sometimes get these mini obsessions where I find something I don't know much about, and I just dive into it for a bit, read around it, learn about it, pull it apart and put it back together again. So yeah, I love variety.
Yeah, it's I mean, you're talking about GCSEs. It's something that I did. So I think you're a little bit older than I am. I've no idea, but I'm guessing from your GCSE choosing, which is very akin to mine. I'm a Silver Jubilee boy, but it kind of was that. Even when I was at school in the late 80s, early 90s, there was computer technology around. So when you were mucking around, were you a pen and paper guy? Or did you say, do you know what, I've got a computer here, let's get Sibelius, or let's get the earliest form of music notation because I want to work how, and I can make really zany things on this. Did the process sort of intertwine for you?
Not really. Our first home computer was a Commodore VIC-20, which just about played Frogget, and that was about it. I'd muck around on BBC computers and program them with BASIC and that kind of stuff and make funny patterns on the screens, but I didn't have any music software until probably 1994. Okay. So everything before then was handwritten. The very first song I remember writing out properly, I wrote out the melody line on plain manuscript paper, cut each stave off and glued it spaced apart on a piece of A4, fed it into my grandma's typewriter and typed the lyrics underneath, all the space in. And then, because it was all literally cut and paste rather than computer cut and paste, it was photocopied and it looked seamless then. Yeah. That was my first sort of production, really. That was my first song properly written out. The rest of it's all in scruffy pencil handwriting. I mean, I think my dad found my scores for that march I wrote when I was 15 for GCSE, and it's a mess. It's just a mess of pencil everywhere. Every band part, handwritten and then photocopied. So yeah, I learned by pencil, and I still write that way now. I always write a mini score, 3 staves worth, in pen or pencil, before expanding it onto Sibelius, which I use now. But yeah, that's how I think. It's how I can write quite quickly with by hand, quicker than I can on a computer. So my experimentation came when I got my first sequencer, because I had a MIDI keyboard.
Oh, golly, those were the days.
Yeah, and so I was able to layer up stuff. And in our Sunday afternoon praise meetings on Sundays, so if I ever got asked to play a solo, I'd never play a solo. I always play a duet or a trio with myself. So I'd bring my keyboard, stick it on top of the piano, plug in the sequencer, and play along to what was already recorded. And everyone was like, how do you do that? How does it know what you're playing? And so there's all this mystery going on. But yeah, it was just a sequencer. It was good fun.
Yeah. Who were your mentors growing up musically? I mean, you were mucking around, you were in a Salvation Army corps. Did you ever have sort of the big names or the headquarter music department names coming through, or the chance to go and see him at a concert with a local Salvation Army band? Did you ever kind of get exposed to the Stedman Allens, Kenneth Downeys, Les Condons of the day?
Only really through fleeting visits. I mean, I remember Peter Graham coming through music school, and Norman Bearcroft and a few others. They would come and do workshops and stuff like that, but it was all very brief, really, sort of one day flying visit.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were conducting the band, they'd talk about how they wrote their stuff, what the inspiration was, the ideas. So yeah, that was all very stimulating. But as in many things, I'm an autodidact, I self-teach. I delve into and I pull things apart and I put them back together. And that I tend to learn that way. I didn't have a tremendous amount of input directly from experienced musicians. I guess in some ways that could have set me back, but in other ways that means I've had my own path, really.
It sounds very kind of an experimental, but a successful experimental journey in music. So,
yeah.
Did the sections in the core band enjoy it when you said, "I've been fiddling about again, would you like to try this new song"? Was there the rolling of the eyes, Darren, or "Oh, hang on, this is going to be good"? Were they incredibly polite and well mannered?
Do you know what? I generally felt very encouraged, I have to say. That I never saw or heard any eye roll.
It's not, of course not.
I do remember having some sort of conversations with more experienced musicians. Well, I think we played something of mine at music school, and the chap who was leading the band came to me after and said, "You might want to consider writing parts that fit the instrument a bit more." And of course, being 17 or whatever I was at that point, I was like, "Well, I can play it, so what's the problem?" So I probably could have been a bit more humble about that and actually listened to the critique, because he was absolutely right, bang on the money. But other than that, no, I really felt encouraged. In fact, a song I wrote for the singing company at my home corps, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there was a new junior soldier made, and she chose to use that song, which is probably 30 years old,
yeah,
as her sort of dedication song for the meeting, because the singing company still sing it there.
Yeah.
So I think they still have affection for some of the stuff I did. Other bits have been deservedly forgotten, but then it's all experimental at that stage, isn't it? So.
Can you remember the first time that you were asked? I would go on the presumption that you have been asked to, because I would find it very odd if you hadn't, but break the rule and be the eccentric person that you are. First time you were asked to conduct a piece of your own, whether in the band or in the singing company or whatever. Do you remember the first time when you were asked, "Come on, you wrote that, you conduct you lead the full"?
Oh, that probably would have been quite late. I'm just trying to. Yes, I think it would have been. That would have been the piece I mentioned earlier at music school, where I'd written the solo horn part very high and difficult. At that time, I was a solo horn player, and it was an arrangement of "I Need Thee Every Hour," the songster. I need thee every hour. Beautiful tune. And yes, I was asked to conduct that when I said, "Oh, can we have a play through this to see what it's like?" So I do remember that, and I remember taking the second cornets to task over their lack of articulation at one point, and the bandmaster gave me a little clap. So yeah, well said, thank you, because he was trying to get through to them all week, I think. So I think that must have been the first time, because at my home corps, if it was a song, I'd be playing the piano for it, so it wouldn't be there would no one else really who would accompany it, so I couldn't conduct it. And with the band, again, I'd be playing or taking part in it. So yeah, I think that must have been the first time. It's the first recollection I have, anyway. Yeah, that would have been Midhurst, I think, in the Southampton and Channel Islands division, as it was.
Oh, great! Never been there. Would love to. And yeah, so it's when you're bringing them, obviously you've got a wide range of tastes of music that inbred you and fill you up and sort of inspire you.
Yeah.
When I was looking, as I said, looking at this piece from the other end, looking from the Finnish point of view, going, okay, I know much about the Finnish point of view, and one of your most famous things is "Guardian of My Soul," the elephant in the room. Beautiful arrangement. I've heard many stories. I think we were in Felixstowe when Salvation Brass played it, and you were sitting off to the side.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, this guy wrote the thing, so he knows exactly what's going to happen. There can't be any surprises in store, because you go, okay, the cornets are going to do this, the bass is going to do that. And the fact that you said, you know what, that really blew me away. I thought, wait, how can it blow you away? You know what's happening. But it's a wonderful man. But when I came to sort of, you've agreed, let me go and sort of have an analytical look. Of course, everyone familiar with the second half, but I had to dig for the first half, Guardian of My Soul, and to try and find out, to work backwards and go, okay, so when did Guardian of My Soul as a band piece come around? Because I'm guessing that, I know it's in Magnify, the original song, which has a copyright date of 1996 on it.
That's right.
I remember Woolwich having Magnify for a while, but we never really, I don't think it caught on very much, because I think some of the songs were a bit too advanced for us. So when did I Worship You, the song, originate? Where did that come from? Was it a singing company, experimental piece at your home core? Because that obviously led on to the band piece. So the two are obviously different things. So go from the beginning, if you please.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the song came before the band piece, so you could reuse it.
Yeah.
Where did the song come from? What's the story behind the history of the song?
The song has a long history, because it probably took 20 years to write in its entirety, or something like that, because, as I've alluded to, I wrote the melody when I was about 13. Mm-hmm. That was a stage when I wrote a whole load of melodies, some of which other people have never heard, that still carry around in my head. I think my immediate family would have heard them, and my parents will have, but apart from that, they're not out there as such. So that was when I was 12 or 13. So what would that have been? 87, 88, that kind of era. 1987 maybe. Mm-hmm. So it would have been 95. So quite a bit later, 8 years or so later, when I was approached to take part in a publishing project to write congregational worship songs. So I submitted 6 songs to that. So I was rooting around in my archives. What can I submit? I wrote some new ones, brand new ones for the book. But then I also wheeled out this melody. I thought this is a good one to sing. It's simple, sounds nice. I think it'll go down well. Didn't have any words for it, so I paraphrased 1 Peter 2, 24 and 25, or somewhere around there, to make the lyrics for that one verse. And so that one verse got published and then got picked up by Magnify a few years later on. But then the feedback to the song was always, we love this song, but it's too short. There's not enough of it. And I guess a lot of people perhaps would have overlooked it because it was so short. It wasn't worth picking up, maybe because it didn't have a second verse. So
I was listening to it earlier. I scanned it through I found the original backing track for it, and I thought it's very straightforward. It's not, as I say, you don't need a PhD in astrophysics to understand it. It's not, a Royal Albert Hall piece. It's designed to be functional and useful for a congregational.
Yeah, absolutely. I pared down any accompaniment just to make it, as you say, simple and straightforward. It's not really challenging to play or to sing. In that sense, the music carries the words and gets out of the way. I think that's a good thing. But it would have been another few years on, another probably 13.
Oh, just to realise what's just before the page just flicked over from I Worship You to I See Forsaken Children by Andrew Grinnell, which is The Warrior Covenant by Nicholas Samuels. Sorry, I just... over. So, yes, carry on. Sorry. I just didn't realise that was in the same book. I Worship You, the subject, the best one, the one that we're talking about, yes.
Indeed, yes. We're approaching the second verse now in about 2009-ish, 2008. The thing is, I had tried to write a second one and nothing worked. Nothing really fit. So I cannot remember why or how the thought came, but I really then just decided, well, if I'm saying I worship you to Jesus, then I need to then say, which I had already, as going into officership, I'll follow you. That's the response, isn't it? To Jesus, who comes along and calls us, all of us, whether we're officers or other forms of disciple. We're all called to take part in this great mission of Jesus and to be part of his body. So he calls to all of us, and we all say, or have the opportunity to say, I'll follow you. But it's not a straightforward following, it's a following along the road to the cross. So that's where the second verse came from, the inspiration for that. But as I say, that came many years after having it published.
Yeah. But then
so the
a lot of people have done that in the past, haven't you? I mean, Gareth and Larson have had, they've asked, can you extend this because we want to make this a congregational song, whereas it was only fitted for that 2-minute gap in the musical. It's part of a structured story. So it's very much a case of, can you add a second verse? Can you? And you think, do you know what? That leads me on to doing other stuff. And the God, it's a very a common story in composers, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it is. Lots of things get reworked and added to and put into different things. Yeah, I guess I've recycled quite a few things over the years as well. Yeah.
So obviously it gets published and picked up as a worship song.
Yeah.
And gets life, like many of them do, and your name starts to get bandied about. Now, I remember Ipswich Band getting hold of the music privately. I think it's because Andy had got it through Salvation Brass. No real, I don't think we had any real intention of using it. He just wanted to sort of say, look, we've picked this up. Andy, if I'm wrong, please say I'm wrong. And I was kind of, no, this is a very interesting arrangement. I mean, I will admit to many people that meditations are not my most favourite form of army music. Being a drummer, I love a good march or a festival arrangement. And I remember we had a funeral at Ipswich, and the family had asked for The Light of the World, and I had never played it before. We just didn't do that at Woodbridge. We'd done a lot of to play the big famous pieces. So I got familiar with the tune of Aurelia and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Then I come to it and we play this, and he says, I think the Anglia Fellowship Band, and yet again, it could be wrong, played it in a private festival, and 3 bandmasters came up to us and said, where the heck did that come from? Where was the music from? Where did that get written? And I'm told, and prove me wrong on this, that such was the fact that all the Salvation Army bands had got private copies of Guardian of My Soul, that they were told that if they didn't publish it, they'd be in serious doo-doo. And they were absolutely, you had to, do you mind if we publish? Now, how much of that is fantasy? How much of that is Chinese whispers that are, what's the official version from the composer?
Well, I don't know what the story was publishing-wise in any detail. I do remember having a conversation just previous to it being published with Andrew Blythe. He came to Southsea where we were at the time, and he was leading the band weekend, I think I remember, and we were having a chat about it. And I think the sense was, well, we really hope it's worth publishing now because so many bands have got it. I think that was acknowledged.
Yes.
But thankfully, they decided that it was worth publishing. I think that's all I can really say. In the end, I think they knew that it was already being widely used. But yeah, I don't think that they were.
Did you have to sort of change anything for the official publication, or did it sort of go in? Because the times I've read about composers who've told me that certain notes in marches and hymns have been altered, and they said, why? I just don't get it. I mean, I'm a Salvationist composer. I know the structure. I know the regiment of what to expect. And it's almost, as you said, pulled apart spaghetti bolognese and finished on the plate. Okay, Army Ministry, not like for a TV series where it's Percy Blogs. Yeah, they've just taken their name off it because the published version bears so little relation to the original version. So
right, yeah, no, it wasn't as bad as that. No, there are one or two editorial decisions which we talked through first before I agreed to them. Very minor, really. Sometimes rhythm changes in one note of one part here and there, just to make everything line up. And the score was simplified because it probably looked a bit of a mess. I'd over-articulated everything just to make sure bands did what I wanted them to do. But you do leave a bit to the imagination in proper publishing. So I guess that. So it was sort of polished up and changed a little bit, but not significantly, not really at all. and some of the things that I think of as unique touches in there have been kept in. So it wasn't really messed with, I wouldn't say, no.
No. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the linkage with Aurelia, O Jesus, I Promise, Thou Guardian of My Soul, is because of the central theme. Was that kind of an obvious hit for that song to be included when you when you made the band arrangement of it? Was it going to start as just an arrangement of the original song, or how did the inclusion of Aurelia come into it?
I didn't have a clear vision for the piece when I started it, other than I wanted to write something. It came at the end of a long illness. I'd been ill with ME. It was debilitating. I was bedridden for a number of years, and I was gradually coming out of that until November 2011, when, although physically I wasn't strong yet, the clarity of mind that I'd missed for all those years, 6 years by that stage, suddenly came back. I could concentrate again, which meant I could think music again. And I had rewritten from memory something I wrote, an arrangement I wrote back when I was 17 again or so, that our bandmaster at South Sea wanted. He said, "Have you still got it?" I said, "No, it was all handwritten. Don't know where it is now." It has since been dug up, and I haven't had the courage to compare the parts to see whether I got it right or not, but hey. So I rewrote that from memory for him, for South Sea Band, so they could play it at, I think they were doing a concert at Sunbury. And once I got into the rhythm of it, I thought, I've got the taste for this. The sound of the band in my head, I need to write for band now. But being as poorly as I had been, I didn't want to be going to too much effort. So
no, because you
I need to write something.
You can only push yourself so much, can't
you? Yeah, exactly. So I chose something that was very familiar with me, and as I've already indicated, I've carried the tune, the song "Guardian of My Soul," or "I Worship You" as it's known, with me for a long, long time. It's been with me forever, as far as I can remember, this tune. So that was a natural choice. So I started writing what is now letter A. That was something that did change, all the section letters, but it doesn't really matter, does it? I started writing them at the melody, that "I Worship You, God's Only Son." That's where I started. Then I worked back into the introduction because I'd found the theme that was going to sew everything together. So I threw that into the introduction to lead us in. But when it comes to Aurelia, I always say that I had no choice in that, because it was turning out, as I wrote, that this was becoming my story in music, that I was writing, "Lord, your wounds are now my healing, and I'm wholly yours. You know my name and where I'm going." Now, I didn't know where I was going, because I'd had to leave officership behind because of my illness. My life's calling, I'd never intended to leave. What was God doing? Was God using my illness to maneuver me into something new? Or was this just something to enrich me spiritually, to build character and all those kind of things that people would say to me, so that then I could go back into officership a different person, which that's what happened. But I didn't know at the time what was going to happen. Would I ever be well enough to get back in? So, "Lord, your wounds are now my healing, and I'm wholly yours, but you know my name and where I'm going." So because it was related to my calling and direction, I had to include "O Jesus, I promised to serve thee to the end" as a tune, because that was part of my calling. That's one of the songs that God spoke to me through. So that was the first reason. But then when you realize that I was trying to find out what God had in store for me, "Oh, let me hear thee speaking in accents clear and still. Let me know where I'm going, please." And the end of that verse, "Thou guardian of my soul,"
which is a click link.
So tell me, did I have a choice, Morgan? I really
just
didn't.
It's one of those obvious things that you think no other song could perfectly fit. But the purpose I find is to say, now, as the composer, was it a case of I had no other option? Do you know what? It just happened. It was out of the blue. It was God joining the dots together. The tune landed on it, and before I knew, yes, of course, it was God-given. It was God-given, yes. But it kind of comes, from the back of the brain, or you knew full well that you were approaching it. So I knew full well how this piece, there was no other piece of music I knew could fit it. So I was kind of interested to see that, did it start out as just a chance to band arrange the original song? And then, of course, with hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And you kind of go, do you know what? That Guardian of My Soul, oh Jesus, I promise. How can I not use that? And it just, so who was the first sort of band that tried out the piece as the completed work? I mean, there was obviously a gap when a lot of bands got it before it went to published and became an official published. But who were the first sort of few bands that you heard playing the band piece outside of your own sort of doodling on it?
Yeah. Well, because part of my recovery had been to be able to go to band practice for the first time in so many years, again at Southsea. And they were so accommodating. I would be able to go and play for 10 minutes, and then I would leave the band and go and literally lay down on the floor in the hall while they carried on.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't bat an eyelid, and they were so lovely about it, so warm about it. They were just so happy that I'd been able to make it for
battling through it, yeah.
Yeah. And while I was laying there, of course, the sound of the band was just seeping into me in a way. I was just listening. I wasn't able to do anything else. So I really felt that it was appropriate that Southsea would be the first to just play through it. Now, they didn't have a chance to play it out first. I'll tell you why in a moment. But I did make sure that they had a blow through it and I could hear them playing it first. So they got first dibs. Mm-hmm. But the first concert, the first public performance was Salvation Brass. Mm-hmm. At the time, Dean Jones, who leads Salvation Brass, was working at Music Editorial. So my wife had twisted my arm
until... that he doesn't get any remuneration in this for being name dropped.
None at all. None at all. No. Although, yeah, he was really good at getting this piece out there. He really did have a part to play. But my wife had twisted my arm until I couldn't refuse any longer. So she said, "You send it to Dean. You must send it to Dean," because I wasn't going to send it to anyone. This was just a private project. Mm-hmm. So he'd been at THQ prayers that morning with colleagues, and they'd used song from Magnify, Guardian of My Soul, in prayers. And they walked back. He and a colleague were saying to each other, "Wouldn't it be nice to have a band arrangement with that tune in it?" And you can ask him, this is a true story. He got to his desk, turned on his computer, and on his email was my email with the attached score for Guardian of My Soul.
Oh.
That very morning.
As my friend Mark Harry would say, that's a God incidence.
Indeed, and there were many more, but that was where it started. So I've completely forgotten what the question was. Oh, what band? Yeah,
Southsea.
Yeah, so Dean,
the White Cat Brigade, Southsea.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah.
I can't remember another army band that wears white caps.
Yeah, Margate, wasn't it? One of these.
I don't know. I know Southsea do because we've got a band photograph of them with the mark. So
they still do. They still wear them. Yeah, they're very good for fending off seagulls. They're brilliant for the beach.
Sure that's not the entire reason for wearing.
They're kind of rubberized. They're kind of waterproof, you know. Yeah, fair enough. Indeed.
When did you know that this piece was sort of taking on a life of its own and other bands were getting hold of it? Because I mean, you had the score on your shelf, your laptop, and it was being printed off. Was it being photocopied subtly in other band practices and stuff?
It must have been. Yeah. Must have been. It was getting all kinds of places that there are bands who still play what they call the original score, the original manuscript. Yeah. They won't play the published version. So there are, so I'm sometimes surprised who's got it. And I don't know.
Can you tell the difference between the performance of the original and the performance of the published?
Not anymore. I probably could have done to start with, but no, I don't think so.
I mean, if you say there are bands that have got they have the best version, the original, rather than the watered down part, like, there's not much difference. But as a composer, you're playing the original version because I went up to C sharp rather than the natural.
I can't claim that because I don't think I've ever noticed in that sense, but it's possible. It's funny the things you notice sometimes.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't claim that.
What's the most surprising place when you've been to a corps as a private individual or to a player and you've not been warned about it and it gets played? Where's sort of the most unusual place you heard of it being played? You know,
the most unusual place I've heard of it being played was I got a phone call from my parents who were on holiday in Cornwall. They had gone to Padstow. Was it Padstow or Wadebridge? One of those two. And they'd gone, I think it was Padstow. They'd gone down into Padstow, and right by the marina there's a little indent, like where a band sometimes will sit and play at the weekends. They're walking along. That's Darren's piece. So they go along and listen. And this band, I can't remember what band it was. It was a Cornish band, not a Salvation Army band.
Mm-hmm.
Were playing it. And then their friend brazenly went up and said, you know that piece you just played? So the person who wrote it, his parents are over there. So they had to come forward and get, they received my applause for me.
Oh, I love that's parents good.
So a Cornish fishing town in the summer holidays. So my parents came across. It's just unbelievable, really, that they walked into that. The other one I heard of was, again, in Cornwall, the Duchy of Cornwall champion bands of the year a few years ago were St. Denis Band. They played at the Duchy concert to the Queen and Charles and Camilla. They played it there. Mm. So there have been some unusual ones. Yeah.
I think
and then we turned up at our divisional welcome here 6 years ago, and the youth band played it when we were sat in the congregation,
Yeah. I remember John Larson says in his autobiography, he said that, I know I've only got one piece. He said it does get a bit wearing when you know that poor bandmasters, when they want to say, we know who's coming in, let's sing out the music. Like, yeah, that's the only piece of music he's got credited to him. It's like, can we think of something different?
Yeah.
I'm presuming that you just get great blessing from the fact it's being used.
Oh, absolutely.
Does it give you the ear where it's like, oh, please, can we change the tune? Because, yeah, I know I wrote it, but I'd like to hear something different occasionally. It's a beautiful tune. Or are you just happy that people find blessing and contentment in it?
I never get tired of it. I never get tired of the response to it. I never get tired of that because it always encourages me. God always whispers to me when I hear it being played, you see, don't give up, keep doing what you're doing. He always says that to me. He always encourages me because, anyone who is creative will know that sometimes they'll start off and they'll create something and they'll love it for the first 10 minutes. Then they'll hate it. They might, if they're lucky, fall in love with it again when it's done. But a lot of the time, artists really just have a funny relationship with what they've created. But this piece always blesses me, but particularly because it has an impact on people. And to answer the question that I missed about when I knew it had legs of its own was when I was sat on the Sunday of the Our Fight Congress. Mm-hmm. I was at Southsea. I couldn't go. I was at Southsea worshipping, and my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Everyone at the Albert Hall who knew me were texting me and sending me videos about it, saying they're playing, the ISB are playing it. That's when I knew that it had started to get a life of its own, really. Yeah. That it was getting out there. That was really incredible.
So how, bearing it that you have this tremendous musical talent, experimentation, why are there no leaks from the vaults of the collection coming out more? I mean, could we sort of see the sequel, another March or Hymn Tune Arrangement coming out?
Maybe. I'm working on a few other bits and pieces. At the Salvation Brass retreat a few years ago, Bill Himes was the guest, and he said to me, look, I've been thinking about you, Darren. He said, I've been thinking about how you follow up Guardian of My Soul. Yeah. Because he told me that he had a similar problem. He said the first piece he had published, it wasn't even the one he would have chosen to have had published first, I recall him saying, but it was very successful. And of course, everyone wanted to write another one like it. Yeah. And he couldn't. And he was saying, his advice to me was, don't try and write another Guardian of My Soul. Write something totally different.
Yeah.
And that might help you to sort of get into the swing of things as a regular contributor, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's difficult to know what to follow up with. And again, I'm still reluctant to send things. I'm not a natural sharer in that respect. I tend to write because I have to, and then it goes in the folder or something,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I just want to interview. You get some composers who I do have a tendency to ask that there are names who will say you will go to your grave knowing that, like they say about Sir Roger Moore, played James Bond, played the Saint. Not that he had this 50-year career of wonderful things, that you've had an incredible career. It's kind of an unforeseen that Darren Shaw, Guardian of My Soul. I was like, hang on a minute, there's 25 other compositions that are equally as important to me. So it's really nice that you get a blessing from it, and it's not that millstone that it could so easily be. Oh, can we play something different? But tell you what, let me write something, and that gives you a chance to do something else.
Yeah.
I think God has placed it in your heart in a very special way, and it doesn't tire, and your brain doesn't go, ugh. And it obviously brings pleasure and instrumentation. Now, I'm gonna try and attempt to play the band arranger, which has hopefully got lyrics. I think it's Oshara blog is where I found it from. So credit to the people behind this. I found it on YouTube a little earlier. Anyone who wants to know, please, I'll send the link to where I found it. And I'm not claiming any credit for this whatsoever. I wanted a video to show the people, and also for myself to get the lyrics in, because I've only heard the audio and the band playing it. And I found it very important knowing the connection of the lyrics, like it said, to get it in there. So what I'm going to try and do is, if I can share this again, just give me a thumbs up if you can see this okay.
Yeah, I can see it, yeah.
hope that worked okay.
Seemed okay from this end. Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's you find so many variations and things, and just the picturesque pictures. But I desperately wanted to try and find one, but not knowing the piece well enough and not having the score, I couldn't sort of time the words up. So I'm really pleased. Thank you to the people who found that, and thank you for writing it. Does the extended vocal version exist in the public domain?
Well, there's a version that's been doing the rounds. Andrew Mayer arranged a version based on the band piece. It's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? That a song that I wrote that became a band piece has then been arranged from the band piece back into a song. That's kind of
that's a bit confusing.
Yeah, it's kind of I wouldn't say unique because I don't know well enough whether it is, but it's quite incredible to me that something I've created for brass has been then translated back into a song. It's great. And Andrew and I have recently worked on a version that we're both happy with, and we're trying to see whether that will have legs now as well. So I know that his initial arrangements it's been sung by Amsterdam staff songsters and a few other groups as well, including Andrew's own songsters up in Sunderland. So there is a version out there, and hopefully we'll get some circulation on that sometime soon.
For people who want to sort of see the original composer's additional efforts to expand into what God is telling him, that will be available. So
I thought about writing my own version. Sorry, Marvin, but what some of the ideas that Andrew had in arranging it, I really liked, and I didn't want to steal them. So it was better that we collaborated on something in the end than me doing my own sort of competing version. So yeah, hopefully that'll be.
Yeah, so it sounds very much like the old days when British pop songs would come over and they do British covers of American pop songs before the Americans had a chance to be like, oh, hang on, that's already number one and we haven't had a chance yet.
Yeah.
So to go from sort of in backwards mode and to learn the beginnings, it's something I really do appreciate, because sometimes sitting there, the amount of times on a Sunday morning when a song comes up and I'm going, where does that come from? What's the story behind that? I think Bill Himes has famously said that every piece of music, every song has a story, has a testimony. And I think Guardian of My Soul very much, it almost seems not, because it's a very tranquil kind of sedate floating along the river piece, and coming from your kind of zany mind of bulldozer approach to try and find out how things work, the two kind of what he wrote that, the guy that likes to take everything apart just to work out it doesn't seem an actual thing, but maybe that's the beauty of it, I think.
Well, it's like they say about swans, isn't it? How serene they look on the surface, and yet they're working hard underneath.
Yeah.
To paddle along.
So yeah, I'm going to say thank you. It's been an absolute privilege and honour to talk to you about Guardian of My Soul. I really was worried about talking to a composer who only had one thing. How the heck do we make a conversation?
I know. I was watching the previous videos. Yeah, I was watching the previous ones. You're going down their list of stuff on the index, and I'm thinking you won't take long with that with me.
No, but I desperately wanted to give you. You kindly volunteered, and I thought I can't refuse Guardian of My Soul. And I don't think we've had the pleasure of shaking hands, although we were in the hall together. I obviously didn't know who you were.
No.
And, hopefully at some point in the future we'll be able to sort of say, hello Darren, how are you? Nice to meet you, mate. The beauty of the army is that will obviously happen at some point when things go back to normal. But I will ask you the same question, because it's only right. Favourite Salvation Army song? And you can't choose Guardian of My Soul.
Well, that very thing itself says, what's the Salvation Army song? I mean, that's a big debate, really, isn't it? My favourite song in the Salvation Army...
1,049 songs in the songbook. Pick one.
Not all of them generated by the Salvation Army, I have to say.
No, I fully admit that.
Yeah. My absolute favourite song in the songbook is When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. The only song I have lyrics for up around the house is that one. I have a cross downstairs by the front door with love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. That's
Yeah.
You can't say more than that. That's just wonderful stuff. And I was saying earlier how Sir Edward Abraham was an alumnus from my school, but so was Isaac Watts. Isaac Watts, who wrote those words in the 1680s or whatever it was.
Yeah.
He also one of the houses in my school. I wasn't in this house, but one of the houses at my school was called Watts, after Isaac Watts. So I feel like I have a link with Southampton and my school with him. But those words are incredible. And I like it to a Whaley Whaley actually, but there are other tunes obviously which work beautifully with it. It's just a wonderful song.
You realize you've got people now that's going to go back and trying to sing it through a Whaley Whaley just to work out how it goes. But do you have a favourite Bible text?
I have
at the moment. So when you woke up this morning.
Yes, I'm like that with my favourite colour as well. It changes every day. So I'm like with most things. What's my favourite? Well, I particularly love any psalm where it says sing a new song. Particularly Psalm 40, because it kind of tells you why you have to sing a new song. He pulled me out of the oozing depths, one of the translations says.
When I was came, he came and rescued me.
Yeah, so he put a new song in my mouth, yeah? Put a new song, that's that chorus to the song they're singing there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why do we sing a new song? We sing a new song because God's always doing new things.
Yeah.
If you're always singing the old songs, you're just singing about history, and you're not singing about a living, current relationship with God necessarily. I think that's why David keeps on saying, got to sing a new song because God's done a new thing.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing for me. So I guess it's time to write a new one, really.
Well, one of my favourite stories that I was told a few years ago, a friend of mine from a neighbouring corps who shall remain nameless was an officer's kid, and his father was invited to lead a very traditional carol service in a very traditional Miss Marpellian English village in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I think John Rutter or someone had just brought out a new Christmas carol which was doing the rounds, and he included it in his service, and most of the congregation loved it. And he said at the end, he said, I was standing by the door with the vicar and everyone went, thank you, Captain, thank you, Captain. He said, this lovely prim and proper lady came up, fully bespectacled, lovely bonnet, very trim, and said, Captain, it was a wonderful carol service, but why did you include that flipping rubbish in the middle? And he sort of sat straight and said, I didn't, they're all carols. He said, why can't you sing traditional carols that we all know and love? And he looked her straight and he said, ma'am, somebody somewhere had to sing Silent Night for the very first time.
Absolutely right.
So we sing a new song and we use the wonderful Christian heritage to guide us.
Absolutely.
And as you've said in your writings, you don't sit at the piano. You're not going to be Mozart and say, right, that's fine, and I don't care whether it experiments, it changes. No, that's not good enough for God. I've got to improve on that. So I'm going to pray with you. You're at liberty to dance around the room, whatever you wish. That is the beauty of prayer. Dear Lord, the guardian of our souls, the protector, the enshriner, the power behind our lives if we let it be. Oh Jesus, I have promised to serve thee to the end. Darren has so clearly taken that on board and was very much aware of it at an early age, and that the eclecticism of life and the musical directives and the cavalcade of experiences have helped to form him as a person as only you wanted him to be, and that maybe in another song or tune will never come out again, but it won't be a loss because you've taken him in a special way and you've given him this gift of composition of amazing eccentricity and analysis, and that's all part of the Christian that you want him to be, Lord. That he so clearly wants to follow you, and that he has answered your call for his life, and that he is wanting to make sure that every step is the one that you have planned. He said, we are going to get knocked off that pathway, Lord. It's inevitable. We're human beings, and you know that, but you have planned it for us, Lord. When we feel those footsteps treading, now, God, we come back to the fact, Lord, that no matter when we make mistakes and when we say, no, Lord, I'm banging my head against a brick wall because this is not good enough, this can be better. You've already got the answer, Lord. You're already there going, chill, Darren. go for a walk, and you will feel that security that you so earn because you know of the love of Jesus. And we thank you for the love of Jesus. We thank you the tunes and the melodies that so many composers have inspired us with in the past, in the present, and in the future. And I pray for Darren, his family, his core workers, the musicians and the family, and the people that come into contact with him and get blessed because of that contact and the blessings that he will bestow through his music and his Christian witness. Only you can do that, Lord, and we thank you so much for that wonderful experience of Christian blessing and worship. I just pray for him now, Lord, in this weird time. I thank you, Lord, that he's given up his time willingly and voluntarily to talk, and I thank him for that. But I just thank you for Darren, for his ministry, his worship, and his obedience to you, Lord. And I leave him in your hands now, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, I will now